Hello everyone and welcome. My name is Nicolle Mapiye, and on this channel I do videos about my life living here in Australia, and I also share different life lessons that I've learned along the way. In this video I'm going to be talking about why moving to Australia won't make you successful. And in this video I'm going to go through the reasons why I think that. And this video is for all those people who have moved to Australia or you're planning to move to Australia. So if you're interested to see why, please keep watching. So here's why I think that, moving to Australia won't make you successful. From my own experience from moving to Australia, I have seen like the Australian journey not work out for a lot of people. And I think sometimes there's this misconception that people have that moving to a particular country is going to make you successful or more successful than you are already, or have more potential than where you're from, and that is not always the case. I think that immigration is one big experiment. There is no guaranteed outcome. It's like an experiment where you're like in this big lab and you're just mixing together different chemicals and you want to find the perfect formula. Like if you've ever seen like those cartoons when you're kids of like those scientists like mixing different chemicals in the lab until they're making this perfect formula, or even like movies like some mad scientist or something mixing together different potions. That is what I would say life overseas or in a different country is like. You are literally just mixing together different elements, trying to find your perfect solution. So being in a lab, just the fact that you're in a lab, if you're a scientist, doesn't mean you're going to come up with the perfect formula. The fact that you're inside a lab, what's going to make you come up with that formula is the elements that you're going to mix together, which is the same as when you move to another country. I remember when I first moved to Australia in 2008, I came to study. Initially, I was registered, I was enrolled to study a Bachelor of Real Estate and Property Management. I was so excited about that course. In Zimbabwe, that was the thing that was booming at that time, like real estate and property management. I knew some of my relatives who had just moved into the real estate market, and they were really like supporting my degree choice, saying, this is something that's going to be really good for you. You're going to make a lot of money doing this. And then I moved to Australia, and within the first semester, I had already changed my course to study a Bachelor of Business in Human Resources, because I saw that it wasn't going to pan out for me the way I wanted. The environment that I was used to in Zimbabwe and what I was seeing here, it was going to be a little bit different. I saw that, the real estate game is not the same as what I had imagined. And then the other thing is, I discovered that that real estate and property management course was actually fairly new, and it wasn't quite established. Like a lot of people were in real estate, but they didn't necessarily need a degree. They were mostly working from their work experience. So I was like, okay, I could spend 3.5 years or whatever studying this degree, and then I'm competing with people with 10 plus years experience and they don't have a degree. It's really not going to work out. So I had to switch to a industry where they are used to employing people with a degree. So that's why I changed my course. And the other reason is I found that a lot of the classes were going to be on the Gold Coast, and I had my accommodation in Brisbane, and even though Brisbane and Gold Coast are not that far apart, I would really have to do a lot of commuting to go to my classes. And I'm like, all these different variables, I think I should just change my course. So I made the decision to change my course. And I believe that, if I hadn't done that, maybe things would not have worked out for me in Australia. You never know. But that's why I say it's it's a big experiment. You just have to like change different things together. I could have said, oh, I'm now in Australia, like, you know, I can study anything and make it. It doesn't work like that. There are things, and I'm going to link in the description box below the playlist that I did about jobs and careers in Australia. There are some industries that are more favorable for immigrants or like people in general in Australia than others, and they're a bit more safer. So it really depends on like what you decide to enter into. But I feel like, you know, it's sometimes people get stuck in Australia and in other countries when, you know, things are not working out for them, and they thought, well, I've invested so much to apply for this visa, I've moved my whole family to the other side of the world, like I have to make it here. That is not the case. It's an experiment. If you see that the elements that you're mixing are not giving you the perfect formula that you're after, then change the different elements. Maybe it just needs you to move to a different state within Australia. I know people that I've gone to uni with here in Brisbane who are now working in Sydney or in Melbourne or in Perth because they couldn't find the jobs that they wanted here in Brisbane, or they could find them but they were not paying them what they wanted, or they didn't have the right conditions that they wanted, and they moved to a different state. They kept changing the elements to their perfect formula. So just because you move to a certain city in a certain country doesn't mean you have to stay there. You can move around if you find that it's not working. And I also know people who have moved out of Australia completely and have been even more successful than they were here in Australia. So you don't have to like think moving to Australia, all your dreams are going to come true, you're going to be successful. Sometimes the elements just are not going to mix well together, and what you're after is not going to be, you know, what you're going to get here. And even though you've invested a lot of money, it's all part of the experimentation. When you are experimenting and you're hoping for a favorable outcome, you have to be willing to take the risk, and you have to be willing to lose investments, money and stuff in moving around. Sometimes Australia is not the country for you, even though you spend the money on the visa, you moved your family, or maybe you just moved by yourself. Moving to another country might change the whole game and might make you more successful or get the outcomes that you want. So you don't necessarily have to stay in Australia and just think, I'll just keep trying and keep trying, maybe things will change. Sometimes, unfortunately, things don't change, and it takes you having to move to a different environment for things to start moving, you know, in your favor. So I guess the whole purpose of this video is to like just have like a form of encouragement for people who might be feeling stuck. You might be in Australia and you're feeling kind of stuck, or you're in another country and you're feeling kind of stuck, and you think going to another country is going to solve my problems. Like sometimes it doesn't work. Don't be afraid to move. If you could do it once, if you already have moved and you could do it once, you can definitely do it again. If you've done something once, you've obviously learned the lessons. You're gonna do it even better the next time because of everything that you've learned. So don't be afraid to move. Don't be afraid to change your strategy. Even if it doesn't mean moving, don't be afraid to change careers. Don't be afraid to change your areas of study. Like I said, I studied a Bachelor of Business in Human Resources. To this day, I have never held a human resources role, like a purely like HR role. I have not since I graduated. And that's over a decade ago since my graduation. But I haven't worked in a purely HR role, because when I had finished studying, I saw that, you know what, the HR industry was so saturated. If there is one saturated industry, it is human resources. I don't know why people just gravitate towards human resources. And, you know, I really enjoyed studying that course, so I don't blame them. But I have worked in other HR related roles, but not purely HR. And that was what I had in mind. I had in mind that I was going to occupy a purely HR related role because that's what I had studied. But I had to occupy different roles because it just didn't work out for me in HR. And I have always tried to do like a purely HR role until I just gave up and I said, you know what? I don't think it's meant to be for me, like to work in a purely HR role. Like I can do like management related roles, but not purely HR. And that's okay. I didn't see it as a waste of investment of my 3 years of study. Say, oh, I should have studied something else. I could have studied something else and never worked in that industry as well. So it's all a big experiment. The future is not guaranteed. You just have to change up the different elements and keep trying different things, and don't get tired of trying different things. As long as you're in another country, like, things are gonna keep changing, things are gonna be uncertain. Don't be afraid to keep changing and keep trying. The people that I know who've been very successful, like even in Australia, there are people who have done a lot of different things. Like, they've moved. I know, like, this one particular couple that I have in my mind that I know have been very successful here in Brisbane. Like, they didn't start off in Brisbane. Like, when you start to trace their journey, you're like, man, you guys moved from this area to this area to this area, and they have children, by the way. Like, move from this area to this area to this area and this area, and then you ended up in Brisbane, and now things are working out for you. Like, sometimes it has to be like that. Like, it's not just the state that you move to is the state that you have to stay in, or the state that things are going to work out for you. Sometimes you move to Sydney and things just don't move for you in Sydney. You have to move to Melbourne. Sometimes you're in Melbourne and things are not moving in Melbourne, but there's other people in Melbourne and things are going very well. Like, that is why it's always important not to compare yourself to people. Just walk your own path, walk your own journey, and do your own thing, and know what is working for you, and change up your own elements. You don't know what elements people are changing up in order to make things work for them. So you can never really, like, compare your life to other people's life. So you have to just keep changing and keep trying, and you will find your perfect formula if you keep doing that. Because the more you keep changing, the more you keep trying, the more you find your perfect formula. I'm just reminded of this story back in Zimbabwe. I remember this guy who used to cook for us. He was such a good, like, chef. And then I remember this one day, what did he do? He put a little bit of something, like, I think it was too much salt or too many tomatoes in this stew that he was making. And I always used to love just watching people cook and stuff, and I saw him balance out that thing from having too much of something to being the perfect stew that I have ever tasted. And I remember asking him what he did. Is like, oh, I just have to add more of this and add more of this. So you'll see that even from, like, people who are chefs, they'll always tell you, like, it's sometimes the perfect recipe comes from something unexpected. Maybe he had a perfect recipe and then he put too much of something, and then by trying to correct that, he came up with another perfect recipe. So sometimes it might be like that your elements don't quite balance in a certain country, and then you change and you come up with something better than you had planned in the beginning. So that's the beauty of keep on trying and keep on changing different things to find your perfect fit or your perfect mix. Like, even in a workplace, maybe you're in the right company but not in the right role. Keep changing it and you'll find your perfect spot. And if you continue in the same environment doing the same things and it's not working, it's gonna lead to more and more and more and more and more and more frustration. So remember, moving to a country, it's a big experiment. Don't be too hard on yourself. Like, when a scientist is going into a lab, they go there with excitement. When a chef is entering a kitchen, they go there with excitement. They look at the ingredients and they think, man, what can I make with this? And they're filled with excitement and creativity. I think that's the attitude that we should all have when we're moving to a different country. Like, okay, I'm now in this country. I have all these different elements. What can I make? Like, and start changing things up. And if you see it's not working, go and change stuff up until you paint your perfect picture, come up with your perfect recipe, have your perfect formula. It's all about agility, the willingness to keep changing, the willingness to try new things. Never become complacent and too comfortable. Even if you've been in a place for too long, sometimes you can grow and grow and grow and grow and then become stagnant. and you think, man, like everyone else is growing around me, but I seem to be quite stagnant, because you need to start maybe shifting a few things around again. So it's not like a journey where things are going to be linear. You always have to try different things, try different elements, shift things around, move to a different company, do a different role, move to a different city, move to a different country. Doesn't matter how many times you do it, as long as you keep on trying, and eventually you will get to that perfect formula. I hope you found that video helpful, and I will see you in my next one.